This is episode 55 of Hoops Across the Mountain State. And wow, we got a Kanawha-Valley legend, a legend on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. I'm excited. I'm very excited for this one. He's actually a guy that I used to look up to, and he used to help me a lot growing up in elementary school and middle school as well. And he used to come to my middle school and just talk to us about the game and, Christianity and stuff like that. So I really appreciate him taking some time. It means a lot to me as well. But my guest this afternoon, this evening, or this morning, for however you may be listening to this podcast, because now you can subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Yes, we have branched out to the three biggest platforms in regards to podcasting. So we are there. We are here, and we're ready to get going. But like I said, let's not keep up so soon. Let's dive right into this 55th episode, and let's get right into it. As you guys know, I love doing great backgrounds, and wow, I'll say it once, I'll say it again. We got a great background, and wow, I can't stop saying wow. I literally can't stop saying wow, because this is a great background. Let's just get right into it. My guest played at Charleston High from 1981 to 1983. He played for legendary head basketball coach in the state of West Virginia, Coach Tex Williams, at the University of Charleston. He was a second-team All-American at UC. He was a all WVIAC first team member 3 straight years. Not one, not two, but 3 straight years. He was the WVIAC Player of the Year in 1986. He remained second all-time in Golden Eagles history in career points with 2,578. So he was scorching the nets inside UC's basketball gymnasium. He is the second all-time leader in steals recorded in a single season with 80 points. So he got it done offensively, but he also got it done defensively as well. He won 83 games in 4 seasons with the Golden Eagles. He served as an assistant coach at UC from 1996 to 1998. He has a number 14 retired at Morris Harvey / UC's gymnasium. And he played professionally for the Charleston Gunners, which we'll get into later. We'll sort of dive into what that all meant and what that was. And now my guest serves as the state director for the state of West Virginia in regards to Fellowship of Christian Athletes, better known as FCA. He has held that position since 1998, and he was responsible for overseeing the staff, direct new hires, and to cultivate donors and board members. So without further ado, let's introduce our guest for episode 55, the legendary, like I said, the legendary Kanawha-Valley basketball player, Keith Tyler. Keith, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, Taylor. It's definitely a privilege and an honor to be here, and excited, man, excited for you in the program. And I was looking forward to this opportunity, so it's good to be here.
I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, you talk about someone to get hard, trying to get hold of somebody. Keith is probably one of the hardest people I had to go through. I had to go through HR, I had to go through PR, I had to go through a secretary, I had to go through everybody. I mean, it's like when you're growing up, you open up the book and it says, okay, find Waldo or try and get a hold of Waldo. That's what it was. That's exactly how it was. It took forever. Very, very generous. I had people help me out, but I really do appreciate them helping me get into contact with Keith. But let's just get right into it, Keith. Like I told you, I'm excited. I'm very excited about this episode. And we're going to go down a bunch of different directions. If the audience doesn't know, we're going to go over his playing career at Charleston and UC, or better known as Morris Harvey, playing for Tex Williams. We're gonna dive into something that I've actually thought about in depth a lot recently, and that's the rich history of Kanawha-Valley basketball just ever since the state became a state back in 1863. Because I think the Kanawha-Valley in particular, and Keith could probably attest to this as well, just how many great players came through this state, especially in the Kanawha-Valley, that a lot of people forget about. So we're going to dive into that as well. And then we're going to talk about FCA, sort of what he's doing nowadays, how life's been since 1998 serving at FCA. And like I said, we got a lot to get into in such a short amount of time. But like I said, let's get right into it. But Keith, let's first start off. And I want to ask you about your days at Charleston High. And people now know that Charleston High is not in existence. It's now Capital High School.
Yeah.
But looking back at playing at Charleston High, and especially during the era that you played, I think is so unique just because that's whenever basketball was still brewing up. There was a lot of great teams with a lot of great players as well, including yourself playing in the state of West Virginia. But just sort of walk everybody through what it was like playing at Charleston High before it became Capital High School.
Wow, you talking about a great basketball tradition and history at Charleston High. I believe they won 3 straight championships. I want to say 72, 3 and 4, or 71, 2 and 3 when they had Lowell Harris, Levi Phillips, Michi Watson, Kurt Price, all of those guys, Kurt Calloway, just I think Sammy Brooks, just an incredible team. Lowell Harris, and they were coached by Lou Romano back then, and they had a great tradition of winning and playing hard and just really going undefeated and just having some great basketball talent come out of the Kanawha-Valley. And so Charleston High had this incredible history in when you're thinking about the basketball and even the football team. And I remember it was a big deal to be on the Charleston High Mountain Lions basketball team because of what it represented. And when you talked about Charleston High, it was history, it was the name. It was just a great opportunity to play there and be called a mountain lion. It was something that I still to this day, even though you got Capital High School, I still look at CHS, Charleston High Mountain Lions. And it was really great for me. I felt really prideful to have that uniform on and be able to play 3 years at Charleston High School with the tradition of the school. I remember my sophomore year, we used to play in the old Civic Center before the new one opened. And then our home games were actually over at the University of Charleston. And then I think by my senior year, the Coliseum had opened, and then they had the state tournament there. But we had our home games at the University of Charleston. But playing at Charleston High was just incredible. Just so much history and tradition with some of the names already named. You think about Levi Phillips, and I think there was a Deacon Harris with the WU. Just a great plethora of incredible athletes that played there in basketball. So I really cherish that, being a part of Charleston High Mountain Lions and playing in that program from 81 to 83.
So I got to ask the question because, my dad is just somebody where, especially growing up, he'd just be like, oh, well, back then we used to always be out in the basketball court playing pickup every day during the weekend. We'd be out there from the crack of dawn until dawn and dusk and everything else. But walk me through this. Where would a young Keith Tyler just playing the game of basketball, even playing 5-on-5? Where were some places growing up to where you just wanted to continue getting better and you knew that good competition would be there?
Oh, wow. Well, you would play in Wirtz Avenue where I grew up on the playground. Sometimes you would go down at Wirtz Avenue, the playground where the rec center was, and you could play all day long. And it was people that came up into Wirtz Avenue to play. Then we played over at the Canal City Rec Center every Saturday and Sunday. And we would go over there, and some of the best basketball players in the state played there. And you would have to sign your name on the sheet. And the first 5 played the second 5. Then if you lost, the next 5 played the winning team. And so if you lost, you might not get up for another 45 minutes or so. And so every Saturday and Sunday, the gym would be packed. Then we used to go to 2nd Avenue on the west side and play. Then we would go to Donnelly Street and play. I mean, you could go almost anywhere and find a game of basketball growing up. And listen, it was very competitive. Guys played hard. Guys were committed about getting better. It wasn't like you just played to have. It was like you wanted to win and you didn't want to lose. So it was very competitive. And so you could really go all over the city and play. And the playgrounds were full and the basketball courts were full, not only on the weekends, but during the week. I mean, we played so much basketball growing up. It was unbelievable. It was almost every day in the summer, especially in the summer. And then when you got out of school, you went somewhere to play. And then we played in a lot of the rec leagues, like at the Y, Donnelly Street Community Center, Canal City Community Center. And all the guys I named that played at Charleston High, and a lot of guys that played at Stonewall and Dunbar and South Charleston and St. Albans, they were there too. So back in the 70s and 80s, the basketball, in my opinion, was a whole nother level of what it is today, what we deal with today.
You mentioned a name earlier that I continue just to marvel around the career that he had, not only at Charleston High, but also at WVU, and that was Levi Phillips. For people that don't know, he was actually the first person to score a basket in the WVU Coliseum. So I find his career very, very interesting as well. But Keith, I'll ask you this. Whenever you look back at just watching Levi play and just seeing how he played the game of basketball so differently than other people did, what was his game like back then compared to where, a lot of these players are trying to replicate some of these players nowadays?
Yeah, I was a little bit young, so I never did see him play at WU, but I played against him when I got older in a lot of these rec leagues. Just incredible talent, long arms, could dribble, can shoot from the perimeter, could get to the basket, would dunk. I mean, he was just this phenomenal athlete that was, it was almost like a guy that you think you can guard, but once you get on him, he just had so much that he was hard to contain, and he was very deceptive as a player. And I remember playing against Levi when I was in high school. In college, they said Levi Phillips played at WU, and I was like, wow. And so he was really incredible. And when you think about talent like Levi and some of the guys that I name, and they played it in the late 60s, early 70s, today those guys would be at the top Division I schools, colleges in the country if they were coming out right now. That's how good they were. And Levi was at the top of that. He was one of those guys that could play at that next level.
So did you have a starting five or a five that you call up and just say, hey, maybe at this court in 5 or 10 minutes and you guys go play?
No, you know what? Back then it was like whoever showed up, the first five's up. It was one of those deals. Now, because when you came to the playground or to the rec center, and it was just pick up first five. I got him. And so we tried to, whoever was choosing teams, you try to pick the best 5 for your team. And you didn't care if he was from Stonewall, St. Albans, South Charleston, Charleston High, because you wanted to win and you didn't want to sit down. And so it was like when you came, it was all about winning and competing. And it really wasn't like sort of the way it is in a way now where, guys are so friendly to one another. And it was about being competitive, this bulldog tenacity. When you step between the lines, it was all business, even in the playground. And so, when we used to go to the rec center, it was like first 5 get on that list. That's who you playing with. And when you got up with that first 5, you would do anything possible to try to win and not have to set out.
You hit something very interesting in that statement, and that is the competitive fire that is kind of missing nowadays. You mentioned the friendly part about how you go to a basketball court and people are just very nice to one another. And compared to back then, I mean, my dad's told me stories before, and he's pretty much spot on with what you're saying as well. And that is, whoever was up, you're wanting to kick them off the court. That way they can wait longer. That way you didn't have to see them again. That's how it was back then. But nowadays, like we just said, that fire is sort of dulled off and it's sort of become extinguished to a certain degree. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. 100% I would. And I hate to use the word soft, but guys are not as competitive, I think, as the older guys like myself. And it was about really playing hard and being committed and dedicated to your craft. And it wasn't, when I played against my brother-in-law, played at Stonewall and I played at Charleston High, when we used to play one-on-one together, listen, war. And that's when it was war. It was, I wanted to win, he wanted to win, and we would at it. And so you don't have that competitive nature, I think, in some of today's athletes. You don't have that. And I think that's what we're missing. And so I don't think the kids are as tough as we were mentally and physically. We were mentally and physically tough, and we wanted to win. But after it was over, you were still friends. But when you stepped on the court or between the lines, it was almost like, hey, this is serious business. And I think that's why some of the times I think in our society today, and even in sports, you don't see that. And I hate to say that, listen, we didn't shake hands before the game. We waited till the game was over. And not being mean or unsportsmanlike, it was almost like, hey, this is business. And I want to win, and I'm going to concentrate and focus on what I have to do. And we didn't have social media, so we wasn't texting our opponents, and we wasn't Facebook friends with them and Instagram buddies. No, we were enemies. We were enemies as far as that competitive nature. And then when the game was over, it was friendship. Yeah.
I find your story very fascinating just because you had a successful career at Charleston High and you went on to play at UC as well, which we'll get into later on. But I want to stick with your prep career and especially even a little bit before that. And when you look back at where you were prior to going and playing at the collegiate level, who were some people that really helped you and just really amped you up to get to the point where you're just like, okay, I can, and then well, pretty much what I'm trying to say is they helped you realize that you got something going on here, and especially whenever you found out as well that you got something going on here as well. Who were some of those people that kept pushing you to just try and get the best out of you?
Well, you know what? I was always a kid that really looked up to my coaches, and I always did what they told me to do and worked hard. I always was on time and tried to work as hard as a player. Even when I was little and I played rec league basketball as an elementary school kid, I really honored, I think, my coaches. And even when I got to junior high school and played for Coach Howard Daniels, and they sort of motivated me and believed in me. Then when I got to Charleston High, Coach Lowell Harris was my junior varsity coach. But really what happened to me, I loved the game so much. I was competitive before all of that. Like my coaches helped me, but I was competitive anyway because I used to play as a young kid I can remember being in the first and second grade, going to the playground, shooting, dribbling, playing against the older kids. So I loved the game of basketball really before I got into that organized basketball as far as junior high and high school. And so I loved the game anyway. So I didn't really need a lot of motivation. And I didn't have to really look up to another player or even a coach to get me going because I was already motivated to play. And my coaches helped me to see that I had more potential. And I think it really clicked when I got to high school and I started going to New York every summer. So I would go to New York every summer and I would play against Pearl Washington, Walter Berry, Kenny Smith, John Sally. I played for the Gauchos. It was one of the best AAU teams in the state of New York. And so I started going to New York, I think my 9th, 10th, and 11th grade summers, because I had relatives live there. So I went there every summer and I played in some of the best summer leagues in the country. And so I got better playing against better competition. And then when I would go to New York, they were asking me, what college are you going to? And I said, well, I'm not even being recruited. And they were like, what? I said, no, nobody's even recruiting me. I remember Johnny Sally asking me that. I said, no, I'm not even being recruited by anybody. They said, you can't. So some of the people thought I was already in college. Someone thought I was a senior going to college. And I was only in the 9th, 10th grade. And so those summers in New York helped me get to another level in basketball because those guys thought I was already being recruited heavily in Division I. And I wasn't. I really wasn't getting looked at all my 10th and 11th grade year at Charleston High School. My 11th grade year, maybe towards the end of the season, because I never made it to the state tournament when I was at Charleston High. So even though I led the KBC at Kanawha-Valley Conference in scoring and made all conference, I never made it to the state tournament. And being from this small, you can call it a small market, back then in the 80s, there wasn't a lot of coaches coming in. And then, you know, you had a couple of teams that was really getting all the press, most of the press, because you had South Charleston, and you had Mark Klein and Williamson, and those guys, you had even Tim D'Agostino at Polka. They were getting more press than I was. And so I wasn't really getting heavily recruited. But when I went to New York, my game I was at a whole nother level, and people tried to say I was a late bloomer, but I don't believe I was a late bloomer. I just think I was really getting overlooked. But Tex Williams knew what I could do, and he saw it in me early. And that's why I ended up at the University of Charleston.
Where do you think you saw yourself grow the most when you go out during the summers to New York?
I think I realized that I had the potential to play against anybody. So, you know, like playing here in West Virginia, and then you go to New York and you're able to go and start. I started for the Gauchos. You know, I started when I played me and Pearl Washington. He was the 1, I was the 2. John Sally playing. So I would go there and I was a starter on those teams. I was like, whoa, so I'm just as good as these guys from the city. And so when I realized that, it really helped me and motivated me to, when I got back to West Virginia, okay, I'm gonna try to really show and elevate my game and show who I am. And I was able to do that when I came back. Every summer I'd come back and play at Charleston High. Now, one of the things, I had a little setback my junior year. I broke my ankle probably in September. It might have been in September, late August, and I broke my ankle. So I was probably 75% to the middle of the season, and then I got to 100%. Even though I started my junior year, but that ankle injury set me back a little bit. But I just thought I could play with anybody or against anybody. I thought I was just as good as any guard in the state, because that's what gave me the confidence when I would go to New York and play against these guys that were going to Duke, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, Syracuse. And so, playing against those guys. And, and so when I came back, I was like, you know what, if I can play out there, I can definitely play here.
That's awesome. See, I never knew that about you. I never knew you would go up to New York. That's so fascinating. You say that, just because you brought up a lot of great guys as well, just in the state of college basketball. I mean, you mentioned Pearl Washington and Kenny Smith as well, just playing with them. I mean, those are two of the more iconic basketball players, not only collegiately but also professionally as well. I mean, Kenny Smith went on to win a few NBA finals as well. But that's awesome. I never knew that about you.
Yeah, I think Kenny Smith, I played for the Gauchos. I think he played there was a team called Riverside the Church. So we would play against each other in these leagues. And I mean, Walter Berry was one of the smoothest big men. He was left-handed, and I think he ended up going to Syracuse too. Didn't have the pro career. I don't know if he got drafted, or he got drafted, didn't last long. But yeah, I was right there. It was a great, listen, I had one of the best basketball experiences, in my opinion, than anybody that's ever come out of the state of West Virginia. I think my experience was unbelievable. And I look back and go, whoa, I did that. I've been here. And so I had a great career and a great experience.
You heard it here first, folks, on episode 55 of Hoops Across the Mountain, say that he had the most unique experience. So there you go. You got to stamp it now. That's yours. You got to own that now.
Amen.
But no, I think again, your story just fascinates me, just because you mentioned how under recruited you were coming into high school, and especially throughout high school. Then lo and behold, here comes a legendary head basketball coach by the name of Tex Williams, who already established himself as a terrific head coach at St. Albans. Now he's coming in the University of Charleston, and he's picking up a guy by the name of Keith Tyler. And what was that like? What was that first interaction like between you and Coach Williams?
Oh man, I think it was a match made in heaven. I think he knew what I could do. He saw the intensity that I played with. He saw my jumping ability on my jump shot. He saw how hard I worked offensively and defensively. And he really felt like I was being overlooked. He told me, and he said he didn't want people to see me because I remember we were playing maybe South Charleston in this regional sectional game. I had one of the worst games of my high school career, and he came to the locker room and he said, "Listen, son, I know what you can do, and I still want you." I remember that to this day, and that was 30-something years ago. I remember that vividly to this day. He said, "Listen, I know what you can do. I still want you." And so he recruited me, and I knew he really wanted me, because it was almost like I got something in the mail almost every single day from Tex Williams. And Henry Dickinson was the assistant coach at the time. And I knew they really wanted me, because I really wasn't getting the press, the write-ups in the newspaper, and my team never made it to the state tournament. And so I really felt I was being overlooked. I really did, because the people that I was playing against, I just felt like that I was being overlooked. But Tex knew my potential, and to this day, I'm grateful for that. And I had a great career, and he was definitely a huge part of my success, because he put me in a position to do what I was able to do in 4 years at University of Charleston, and then several years after.
His personality is just so contagious. I mean, his his ability just to connect with people. I mean, now he has his basketball, his sports museum, I should say, down in Nebo, West Virginia, and his personality. I remember going down there with my dad, and his personality was just so contagious. It's just almost like he had stories upon stories upon stories, and especially coaching you as well. But just sticking with that personality aspect of Coach Williams, what was so interesting about his personality that just continued to draw you in to not only him but also what he was trying to create at UC?
I think his intensity and his love for the game and his knowledge of the game, I was drawn to that. Like when we were at UC, I used to love going to practice. Like some people didn't. He was so, I mean, it was like his practices, man, was like war. Like today, you'd be put on probation. But I loved going to practice, and I loved his practices because it was so intense. You would at 100% from the beginning to the end, and I love that. And he always put the players in position to use their skills to the best of their ability. So that's what was unique about Coach Williams when I got to the University of Charleston. And he looked at our team and said, okay, I'm going to put him in this position because that's where he can thrive the most. I'm going to put him in it. So he let us use our skill set. So he wasn't a type of coach that said, well, I'm going to run this motion offense because that's what I do and everybody's doing it. He said, no, this guy can do this. I want to make sure he can use his skill set to do what he can do best. And so he meshed that all together and created the offense and the defense around our skill level and our ability to score and play defense. So that's why we were successful. He put us in the best possible positions to win. And the way that he did it makes him unique. He treated everybody the same. I mean, he really did. And he loved his players. He got on me just like he would get on the walk-on. I mean, he was so intense and he was competitive. And the thing about it, he believed in his players. And he treated us with the utmost respect and treated us like men. And he was just unique. And I can say this, and I've said it to this day, he is the best coach that I've ever had. And I know that hurts some feelings, maybe some other coaches that I had. He's the best coach that I ever had. And I played in the CBA, the USBL, the World Basketball League, and I played for the Lakers Summer Pro League team in 1988. And Tex Williams, when I went to camp in the pros, the conditioning program was so easy, it was a cakewalk for me because he prepared me and prepared us. Like I was never tired. I could play 40 minutes a game. And like you see guys raising their hands to come out, never did that. We never did that. We were in such great condition that we didn't have to. I would never raise my hand to come out of the game because I could play 40 minutes and we played Monday, Thursday, Saturday. You see guys asking for breaks. He had us so well prepared that even when I went to the CBA and all those leagues, every conditioning program, I was like, is this all we're doing? It was just so easy. So he had us prepared, man. And here's another thing that's unique about Coach Williams. You see coaches today, and that's their style, and that's their, but he didn't run up and down the sideline hollering and screaming and all. He sat on the bench because what he did, he said, I'm going to prepare you guys before the game, and we're going to get prepared in practice. So when the game starts, I don't want you looking over at me every 3 seconds. I want you to play. And the only time that we looked over there, if he made that whistle sound, and we would look over there and he would change the play or something. And so he prepared us to go out there and play and use our skill and our ability. And that's why we were so successful. And that's why I believe that he's one of the best coaches. He's the best coach I've ever had.
Well, you just mentioned a lot of stuff about Tex Williams, and I find everything so unique about him, just as an individual and as a coach specifically. But, as everybody knows, I'm a big story guy. And I love trying to find a unique story about either a player or a coach or whoever it may be. But I got to ask the big question, Keith. Give me a story. One of these stories that you'll never forget about Coach Tex Williams.
Oh, God, I don't know. There's so many. I guess a practice story. that's really unique. He was about precision and doing things, just a rhythm. And I remember one practice, we ran a fast break and the ball never hit the ground. And knowing who Tex Williams is, he was so excited about that because I guess it was done perfectly because he had trained us. We ran a fast break, the ball never hit the ground, scored a basket. He blew the whistle and stopped practice and called practice. We was only there for about 40 pounds. So that's unique about Tex Williams. And another thing, we had a conditioning program where we used to run from the University of Charleston down to 51st Street in Canal City, and we would lift weights at the Universal Health Club, then we would run back. So we had to run 3.5 miles down. I think it's 3.5 miles back. I think that's what it is. So we ran, it was either 3 miles down, 3 miles back, but we ran down, lifted weights at the Universal Health Club and run back. So what Coach Williams would do, we would take off in front of the University of Charleston gymnasium, and he had this green Thunderbird. And so he would drive down and he would watch us. So he would pull off and he would wait on us. He'd drive down and he'd stop, he'd see us, then he'd get down and we get on Canal Avenue in Canal City, and he would get out the car and he would look and he would see who was coming. And I think he always wanted to make sure that the top 7 or 8 guys who were the starters and stuff, and he would see where we were, and then he would watch us. Then he would get in his car and drive down to the finish line, and we would get there, and he'd have his stopwatch, and he would time us. Just unique when people didn't think about the stuff like that he would do. And another unique thing about Coach Williams, we used to run the boat ramps behind the school, and he always put Tony Gordon and I together. So he would always put the 2 best guards, the 2 best forwards, the 2 best centers, the 2 best wings, and he made us to compete against each other. And if one of us let up on the other, he would take it out on the person that let up. So just unique. And we had to do things as a team. If anybody deviated from the team, I remember we went to the national tournament my junior year, and we were going to eat dinner. And so we were walking from the hotel to the restaurant, and there was like gift shops or something along the way. So we was walking so Tony Gordon and I stopped and we went into the gift shop. 5 or 10 minutes max, because we all going to, and we get down. So we come and we're not late or anything. And I never forget it. He said that we were breaking the team's momentum. And I understand what he meant. And we understand, and I even talk about that today when I'm working with kids or something. You can, like, for example, everybody has to be on the same page. And if somebody deviates from that, you can break the team's momentum. For example, going to bed on time, taking care of your body, going to class, study hall, not staying out late, all of that stuff. And you can break the team's momentum if you do something that's going to hurt the team. And so, he was just about doing things the right way and everybody being on one accord and one page. And it made us successful. Here's what's really cool. And I didn't think about this until we knew we were going to win. Now, when you think about that, we knew we were going to win every time we stepped on the floor. Now, how do you get that mentality? It came from the coach. We were prepared. And I remember we lost in the championship game in the WIAC finals. I've never cried of losing a basketball game. That was the only time in the history that I cried when we lost against Tech in the conference championship my junior year, because it was so weird to me that we lost. It was like I couldn't help it. It just came out. I was like, it just was a crazy feeling that we had lost that game. But he had us so prepared, man. We just knew we were going to win. And we were 19-0 that year in the conference, and we were 30-5 overall. But he played a major role in our success.
It sounded like it. I mean, he's just like you just mentioned. He just had his ways with guys. Sometimes it seemed like, and like you said, he got the best out of you all. And I'm just quickly looking through, your guys' overall records. I mean, your first season, 14-14, finished sixth in the conference. The next season, 22-8,
Yep.
second in the conference. Then the next season, 30-5, 19-0 in conference, and finished first in the WVIAC conference. And then your last season, the 86-87 season, you all went 17-10, but that was under Todd Landrum. But still, the 3 seasons that you were with Tex Williams, you saw the progression each and every year. And each and every year, you not only saw yourself get better, you saw your team get better. And that leads me to my next question, and that is, you mentioned the team aspect, but obviously it seems like Coach Williams always saw something bigger and brighter in you. So he might have pushed you more just because he wanted to get the best out of you. When you saw that, how would you try and be that example or set that example for your teammates around you?
Well, leading by example, because he had so much trust in me, he gave me the green light. I had a green light when I went on the floor, and so I had to set the example about outworking everybody, being on time, being a great teammate, listening, just being this great teammate. So what I tried to do, because he gave me the green light and believed in me, I was willing to sacrifice and work hard and just do those things that I need to do to help the team be successful. And a lot of people don't realize this, that there was no plays designed for me. There was not an offense where we're going to set a double screen, down pick, so Keith can come out off the screen and shoot. We had a system where it was set up that whoever was in that position to score could score. And so by doing that, what he did for me, it created this team atmosphere. We're all equal, even though we got different gifts and talent and abilities. And that motivated me, and it helped me because we loved each other as teammates. And so just that, the way he treated me, it just helped me to be a better teammate, I think. And the confidence that he had in me to get things done. I normally guarded the toughest guard on the other team every game. And just putting me in those positions to work hard, be successful, it just meant a lot to me. And it just helped me throughout my career not to get a big head or be selfish. And it kept me humble. It really did. It kept me humble.
I want to go over some season notes that you guys accomplished during the 85-86 season. So I'm just going to quickly run through this. You guys went to the NAIA Elite 8, NAIA District 28 playoff champs, WVIAC regular season champs, tournament finalists. You guys were the highest ranking nationally that you all had was 5th, preseason national ranking 17th, and you guys had a 12-game winning streak during the season, a 22-game home winning streak that lasted over 2 years. I mean, man, wow. I mean, that's if I had to create a title for this podcast, Keith, it would just be "Wow" featuring Keith Tyler. I mean,
it was people don't realize it was some of the greatest basketball ever played in West Virginia and at the University of Charleston. And I really don't think we get enough credit for it, because, I think we sold out on my junior year, probably almost every game. You had to get there. The game was at 7:30. There was a line coming out the Eddie King Gym, going down the sidewalk, and some people were turned away. The majority of our home games, people could not even get in. And so we had created an atmosphere in our community where people loved UC and wanted to see UC basketball. Tex Williams and our fans and the university created that. And it was some exciting basketball. And we were, and the thing about it, he recruited great kids with great character. And it was incredible. I mean, you think about, you had me and Timmy D'Agostine and Gary Thompson, Mike Wilcox, Tony Gordon, Antonio Martin, Brian Dickerson. I mean, we had David Hall. We had all these guys. David Bradley came there. We had Pat Westbrooks, Jason G, Ron Gator. I mean, we had all these West Virginia kids on the team also from West Virginia, and we were beating, we lost to Marshall, St. Thomas Aquinas, Wright State, Tennessee Martin, and Virginia Tech. Think about that. 5 Division I schools. And then Tech beat us in the championship of the conference tournament. So if you look at that, that's incredible what we were able to accomplish in my 4 years there. And I think it has a lot to do with Tex Williams and the type of kids he brought in and our ability to work hard and buy into what he was teaching us, and just the way we were taught, and our teammates were so loyal to the program and loyal to the commitment to be successful. And we all believed in each other. And, you very seldom see that. And that's why we were so successful. We just, as I look back, what a great experience, because we had this unit as a team where it just seems like we all loved each other as a team. We all respected each other as teammates. We had our own section in the dorm. We all hung out together. We did things together as a team. And it was really a unique situation. And I've never, and I coached at UC for 5 years, and then I've been around programs. I've never seen anything like it since, tell you the truth.
You mentioned a couple of those games you guys played against, and I want to mention one in particular during the 84-85 season, because a lot of the teams that you had mentioned were coming in the 84-85 season. I mean, immediately the first one that I'm looking at right now is saying defeated Wright State, Division I, 149. Let me repeat that again. You defeated Wright State. You all defeated Wright State 149 to 92. The most points scored by a Golden Eagle team. Oh, and by the way, you guys scored 80 points in the second half, which is the most points in a half in program history. I mean, you guys ate your Wheaties that day.
Yeah, it was one of those games where everything we did, it worked. I've never been in a game like that where everybody scored. Everything we did seemed to go right. And Wright State was ranked, I think they were ranked at the time. And they had an incredible program. And it was almost like they did not know what to do with us. We were so well prepared and coached that they were never in the game. They were never in the game. And it was incredible. I think most of our starting 5 were in double figures. We pressed, we threw everything at them but the kitchen sink, and they didn't know what was coming at them. And I tell you, it was preparation. We were prepared. And so when we played the game, it was almost like the games were easy for us. Mm-hmm. And we wasn't scared of anybody. And it was just an exciting game. I think it was sold out. And I never forget that game. It was just unbelievable.
Well, before we get into your FCA work, I want to sort of touch on your professional career, because I think you mentioned it earlier about playing the CBA, playing with the Lakers as well. But just in a nutshell, describe that time, just being able to compete with even more guys, new faces, new games to learn, and having to adapt to all of these different things during your professional career. What was that like for you?
Oh man, I loved it. People have no idea the difference between Division II, Division I, Division I to pro. Because you can look on TV and think, oh, I can play there. I can do. It's a whole nother level of speed and strength. And so I remember when I played in the CBA as a rookie, and just the level of competition every single night. You playing against guys 7 foot, 6'10". You playing from guards that played at Duke, North Carolina, Arkansas, Georgia. Here I am. There were very few small college guards in the CBA, and I was one of the few. And so I got to compete at the highest level. And the thing about it was I could compete at that level. I started my rookie year. I started my first 3 years, and so I started. So I was able to compete because of preparation from college, all that I did in high school and playing against the best players in the country. And then so the game was so fast, the guys were so strong. And here's the difference between back then and now. I think more players back in the 70s and 80s and early 90s were more fundamentally sound. You know, when you look at it now, there's a lot of athleticism involved. But back then, we were guys fundamentally sound. They could pass, they could shoot, they could dribble. They knew the game. And so it's a little bit different now. You see a lot of athleticism, and like a lot of emphasis now is put on weight training, getting bigger and stronger. And so the pro level was just unbelievable. I was just in awe and so thrilled to be a part of that, especially the CBA. It was a great experience playing the CBA in the USBL basketball league, and I played in the World Basketball League in Las Vegas, and it was great. And then the opportunity I had to play in the Summer Pro League with the Lakers, and we played all the other NBA teams, and it was great. I still think that you know how you. I wish I could have made it in the NBA. I had the opportunity, but one of the things that I felt like for me is because I was from a small college, I had to play extremely well every time I stepped on the floor. And you know, I could have a game at 30 points, 7 assists, 3 steals, and there could be a guy that played at a bigger university, could have 5 points, 10 assists, and 1 steal, but he would get called up and not me. So I experienced that a lot in the CBA and the World Basketball League and the USBL, but I had a great experience, and the league was incredible. I remember being in practice with the Lakers. You know, they had, that's when they still had, now Kareem and Magic didn't play on our team because they were superstars, they didn't play. But you're talking about having Byron Scott and AC Green and Kurt Rambis, and being in practice, Adrian Branch and all those guys. And I remember being in practice, and I was like, here, a little old kid from Works Avenue, from Charleston High School to UC. I'm in a locker room with these guys, and I'm going, you know, I was sort of afraid to ask for an autograph because I felt like I had to act like I belonged there. And I remember being in practice, and when we would do line sprints, and here I am, 6'1", 170 pounds, maybe 175 at the time. And these guys were 6'7", 6'10", 7 foot, 6'11". And so I remember running, and it's almost like they were jogging and I was sprinting because they were so big and long and tall. And that's what people don't understand about the next level. And how can you get to the next level? When you get there, can you adapt and adjust to that game? And I was able to do that. I averaged 13 points a game in the Summer Pro League playing against other NBA teams. And I wish they would have had, well, you know, I say that they didn't have the internet, and as far as video, you know, we had VHS tapes. so
What's that?
yeah. And so I had some great games, and I sort of knew the Lakers that year. I think I won all the guys that came to camp. They had just won the NBA Finals. So I knew that I had a feeling that they gave me a chance to try to make the team. They still had Magic. They had Norm Nixon was still there. Michael Cooper was still there. And so I had a feeling, I said, you know what, I got to really try to impress another NBA team. And I really didn't, but I did get a tryout with the Cavaliers a few months later. But I loved it. Great experience. I'm telling you, my career, my experience was, it's unbelievable.
I mean, you mentioned it earlier. You had one of the better basketball experiences in the state of West Virginia, and I wholeheartedly, you know, I'm starting to wholeheartedly understand that now by all these different examples and how, you know, you took each different path and that you excelled at that as well. So I appreciate you sharing those memories with me. I do appreciate that. But, you know, I want to ask you about this before we actually get into your FCA stuff, because I do want to get to that. This is a question that I think will stand alone for the rest of time in regards to athletics, especially collegiate athletics. And that is, high school athletes think that it needs to always be Division One. If you can't make it Division One, you haven't made it at all. I think that's the mindset that a lot of these younger athletes have, which is not the case. Which is not the case at all. I know numerous people that excel at the high school level and that have excelled at the Division Two in AIA, JUCO, community college, whatever it may be. They've excelled at that. And you're another great example of that. And I'm very glad that you're on this podcast because I want you to try and shine light, and especially with the platform that you have as well, just because I feel it's very necessary, just because, especially nowadays with this whole name, image, and likeness kind of thing, people may feel left out, or they may even feel discouraged about how they're not getting these luxury deals with, this community company, or even, national deals as well. Just sort of shine light on playing Division II, the opportunities there, and just sort of connect with the audience, especially the younger audience that are just trying to figure out, okay, if I don't make it Division I, what exactly out there is there for me?
Yeah, there's a small percentage of kids that make it Division I in any sport, football, basketball, baseball. There's a very, very small percentage of athletes that make it to that level. And then when you think about it, the market, say, for example, in West Virginia high school athletes, think about our state. There's not very many athletes in our state that make it Division I in any sport. The population has a thing to do with it. The schools, the coaches has something to do with it. And so Division II gave me the opportunity to really use my skills and get my skills out there, because we played a lot of Division I schools when I was at the University of Charleston. So I would rather be a small, big fish in a small pond than a small fish in a big pond. Because think about it, a lot of kids go Division I that really didn't get recruited, or they walk on and they never have that experience that they think they're going to have. Mm-hmm. And so I tell young people, if you're not being recruited by that Division I school that you want to go to, why would you go? And I'm not trying to discourage anybody. Why would you go there and walk on and pay to go to school? Why wouldn't you go to the school that recruited you and wants to sign you for an athletic scholarship? Why wouldn't you go there and use your skill set and have a great college experience? And so that's what I tell people in the recruiting thing. People have no idea how unique it is, this recruiting, the way they recruit kids. And I say this, now, the coach is recruiting you and you on the list, but there's 20 other people on that list and you might be number 20. And so if a coach really wants you, my thing is offer me the scholarship today and go public with it. But that very seldom happens. So I always say, go where you want it, go where you can play, go where you can have a great college experience, whether it's Division I, II, or III. Because Division I is not all it's cracked up to be if you're not getting recruited at those schools. And so look at me, what I was able to do. Look at Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman. There's a lot of guys, and I say those guys' names because when we were in the NAA National Championship in Kansas City, those two guys were out there. They were the Southeast Oklahoma and Arkansas with Scottie Pippen. They were in the same tournament. And none of them, their teams didn't even win it. So you can, like I said, you can have a great experience at the D2 level and you can shine and have a great college experience, great college friends. And look at my experience. So Division I is great. And if you can make it there, but if you're not really being recruited heavily and you have opportunities to go to other places, I really recommend having that great college experience at the Division II or III level instead of going Division I and really not being, when they recruit you, when they sign you as a preferred walk-on or walk-on, most likely you're not going to enjoy that experience. 9 times out of 10, it's really bad.
You hit the nail right on the head. You absolutely hit the nail right on the head. And I literally, what you just said is what I've been saying all along as well. Every time this discussion comes up, that literally what you say, not verbatimly, but similar to what you say is exactly what I say. So I wholeheartedly believe and agree as well in what you're saying as well. So I appreciate that aspect of it. So now the wait is finally over. We're finally to the FCA part. We've been holding off, but now here we are. You have held this position with the FCA, or you've been a part of the FCA since 1998. Has it felt that long?
You know what? I guess when you're having fun, it goes really fast. Because I look back, and I think I'll be 23 years in January. It goes really, really fast. I mean, when you think about FCA and what we do and how we do it, I just can't believe it's been that long of me being on staff. And here's another thing, just like I said, with the University of Charleston, being born and raised here and just having a great college experience, FCA has been the same way. Being born and raised here, now coming to be a part of FCA and doing ministry in the middle school, high schools, and colleges. It has been fun. It's been a great ride, and it's gone by fast. And we poured into thousands of young men and young women and made just so many, planted so many seeds and seen so many lives change. It's been a great experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
I have a personal question for you in regards to this, and that is, when you try and connect with a young man, young woman, whatever it may be, how do you approach that? I know it can be very different in different schools and environments, but as an individual that's been in this business for over 20 years, how do you try to approach different individuals with different backstories as well? Because that must be a little bit difficult, but how do you go about that?
Well, one of the things we always talk about building that relationship. One of the things about FCA, what I tried to do is especially when I was an area rep, I was always visible. I always went to the schools. I went to practices. I'd hang out at practices, hang out in gyms. I would do chapels. I would hang out in the hallways. I'd go to the lunchroom. And so I tried to be relational and build that connection through a relationship with the students that I came in contact with. And then when I got a chance to speak, one of the things that I would always do is share my story as an athlete and my story before I became a Christian and then after I became a Christian. And so I would try to connect on that relational level, because I believe it's hard to tell somebody something to do, tell them something to do, and they don't know you. They don't know your experience. And so that's the way I approached it a lot when I was in FCA ministry as an area rep, is just being available, being visible, and looking for those opportunities where I could share with students. So my approach was, hey, come to the FCA meeting. We'd love to have you there. My name's Keith Tyler, born and raised here with the University of Charleston. We'd love for you to be a part of our ministry. It's volunteer intensive. You don't have to come if you don't want. You don't have to sign up, but this is what we do and how we do it. And then we get that young man or that young woman in FCA. And then if I had the chance to share, because everybody has a story. Mm-hmm. And so they might look at me and say, okay, you accomplished all these great things as a student athlete and as an athlete, but then I tell them the other side of that. It wasn't always fun. I didn't know Christ, my life before Christ, having really this coming to this point, man, is this all it is? After I played pro, is this all there is to it? There was really no satisfaction in the end. And it wasn't until I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior that I realized what was most important. And so my identity wasn't in basketball, it's in Christ. And so telling young people, you can be successful and have dreams and goals and aspirations, but at the end of that, without that hope in Christ, sometimes it feels like a waste of time. It doesn't feel as fulfilling as it should be.
What is the most important thing that you have learned from working with young adults since 1998?
I say this: be the best you can with what God has given you. What happens, you have people trying to be like somebody else. And what we do as a society, in my opinion, sometimes we put too much pressure on young people. And we say, you need to be this, you need to be this, you need to be successful, you need to be rich, you need to live in this neighborhood, you need to accomplish this as an athlete. And my thing is, be the best you can at what God has given you and always take advantage of the advantage. And that's what I tell young people, because you know, everything's equal at the foot of the cross. And so don't let somebody try to tell you you're less than or you're not as good as, and that's not the truth. Do the best you can with the gifts and skills and talents that God has given you. And I share that because I wasn't a very good student. I was a C average student. And I tell people I could study hours before a test, week at a time, week before the test. And guess what? I still gonna get a C or B on that test. It's just the way God designed me. It's just the way I was made. And so sometimes people look at somebody else because the world, that's what the world does. They'll make you feel guilty, feel less than, and feel bad. And I always tell young people, hey, do the best you can with the gifts and talent that God gave you. And then take advantage of the advantage. If you have an advantage, take advantage of it. And what I mean by that, if you got great parents, great coaches, great teachers, take advantage of the opportunities they put in before you. If you got people pouring into your life that you normally wouldn't have, take advantage of that. You know, I took advantage of the opportunities that I had to go to the University of Charleston. When I got that scholarship, man, I sat in the front of the room. Every class, I sat up front with a tape recorder, taking notes. Never missed school, never skipped school in college in 4 years. Not one time. I can't remember skipping class one time in 4 years that I was at UC. And we would have a road game and get back 2 or 3. Guess what? I was in class the next morning. Take advantage of the advantage and do the best you can with what you have. And here's what happens when you do that. You get the benefit of the doubt. I can remember taking a test. Me and a classmate of mine took a test at the University of Charleston, and we used to study together and everything. And he helped me with my homework because I was struggling, so he helped me get it done. And I got a better grade on my paper than he did. And so what I'm saying is, when you work hard and the teachers and the coaches, or whoever's over you, see that, you'll get the benefit of the doubt most of the time. If I was 2 points from a C, the teacher would give me a C. If I was 1 point from a B, they would give me the B because they saw my commitment to be there and do the best that I can. So I always say, do the best you can what God has given you and take advantage of the advantage.
How has FCA transformed your life for the betterment?
What FCA did for me, it gave me an opportunity to use my gifts and talents and my skills. And so through sport, I think with God, with this divine wisdom, when I was praying a prayer for 3 years, Lord, use me any way you see fit, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes came and asked me to consider coming on staff as an area rep. And so what it did, it opened my, I was a very shy kid in high school and even in college. And it opened me up to share what God has done for me and share the gospel. So I think the benefit, it allowed me to grow as an individual spiritually, and it allowed me to use what God has given me in through athletics to pour into other young men and other young women. And so that's the unique experience that I really enjoy. I've been able to share the gospel because I could put a round ball through a round cylinder, and I can do it pretty well. And so I immediately catch the attention of young men and young women when I start talking about my basketball career, and then I go into the gospel right after that. So it's given me that opportunity to present Christ and present the gospel. And that's what I love about FCA and what it's allowed me to do. And it's allowed me to reach people all across the state. And I've got to do things I never thought I'd be able to do. I've traveled all over the country because of FCA, around the state, just meeting people. It's just been a unique experience for me.
When you talk to a young individual, especially somebody that's trying to understand how to balance faith and basketball, how do you go about just trying to explain that to them? Because like you said, you're talking and you're learning from a lot of these different young men and women. How do you try and best explain balancing faith and athletics?
Oh, wow. Today's time, it's really tough with young people because when you think about it, young people are really, like when you look at the club sports like the AAU, everybody's doing baseball, basketball, volleyball, soccer. And so all these kids are doing training and everything. And so they're putting all this work in and time in to try to get that scholarship. Well, my thing about, you have to have balance with that. What's really important? And I always say, when I'm speaking, one day that ball's going to stop bouncing. And I use this analogy. I say, you know what? I can't run anymore. I can't jump anymore like I used to. And I can remember going to bitty league basketball game, and you know how you shoot the basket and it gets stuck in between the rim, and people look at me and I say, what are you looking at me for? I can't get up there no more. And so I try to tell them it's really good to work hard and to put the time in, but you have to do the same thing spiritually. Give God time, pray, do your devotions in the morning, be involved with the FCA, Campus Crusade for Christ, Young Life. Get involved, go to your youth group at your church. You have to stay grounded spiritually also, and even though you want to be successful athletically also, because there's a balance that you got to have, because one day, the air goes out the ball. What I mean by that, you're not going to be able to do it anymore. And then my experience that I say, because I got saved at a late age, that even though I did all of that, I can remember like this void that I had at the end. Like, it was a void that I had. So there has to be balance in making sure that God's a priority and your spiritual life's a priority. And a lot of people don't know this, that I gave up basketball on my own terms. I could have kept playing in the CBA. I just chose not to play anymore. So who knows where I'd have been, but I think God's divine plan was for that, because I gave my life to Christ a couple of years after that.
Well, Keith, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your time, but also your insight as well. I mean, we hit a lot of different things, and you were sharp. Quite frankly, I was just blown away. Like I said, if I could give an actual title to this podcast name, it would be Wow featuring Keith Tyler, or Wow, the story of Keith Tyler.
Hey man, that's awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And I like, I said, I like helping young people and sharing my story, because I think it can help other people. People look at me and say, wow, when they see the things that I'm doing now. And I had no idea that I could be doing what I'm doing when I was growing up, because the way I was raised, and, just the dysfunction from the family, and just to see how God just has placed me here is just incredible.
Well, Keith, I appreciate your time, and best of luck the rest of the way for you with your work at FCA.
Man, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it, and enjoyed it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, that will conclude episode 55 of Hoops Across the Mountain State with our terrific guest, Keith Tyler. And as I said earlier in the show, we are now on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. So subscribe on all three platforms. Plus, t-shirts are still available. Yes, the podcast t-shirts are still available, and they're $25. So if you want a t-shirt, just message me on Twitter at Taylor_Kennedy7, or find me on Facebook. I'm very approachable on that platform as well. And if you really want one, hey, I'll get you one. As a matter of fact, I'm actually wearing the shirt right now. So here's the front of it. Got the logo right there, nice and sharp. Got the basketball side of it. And then in the back, you got the whole ensemble right there. So there you go. There's a little, if you didn't know what it looked like, you just missed the pictures on my social media pages. There you go. Well, that will conclude this episode. Again, we had a great discussion with Keith Tyler, and I hope to see you all next time on episode 56 of Hoops Across the Mountain State. Thank you all for listening, and stay safe.